blue curtain. Make sure that everything is freaking fine. Okay, we're good over here. Are we good on YouTube? We are. Hello, and welcome to the Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about Baldur's Gate 3. A couple days late, I guess. But before we do that, Buddy, want to tell the folks who don't know what it is we do on this podcast.
On this podcast, we talk about games. Yeah, it's a couple weeks late, theoretically, because the game has been out for so long. But, you know, it's a big game. Got to get through it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just referencing that we're recording on Wednesday since Monday.
That's also true and also weird for us.
Yeah.
It's because I slept through yesterday. It's because Monday was Labor Day. Yesterday I forgot and I was just asleep. And then
now Wednesday comes afterwards in a paraphrased version of a Rebecca Black song. I guess we should spoiler-free impressions. How far have you gotten into this game?
I'm deep into Act 3. Okay. I have you reached the city?
No, I am fairly deep into Act 2.
Okay.
I basically did a thing that I'm trying to avoid spoilers because I'm going to be generic.
Deep into Act 2 is probably good enough. We can just talk about it. Yeah, I'm very deep into Act 3. It feels like we could kind of go into the end game. When I say we, I mean myself and Rachel, because I've been playing co-op with Rachel this whole time. We could just go into the end game basically whenever, but we're just clearing off all these side quests. We're doing 1 million side quests. I guess that's where we're at. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. And I am far enough through that I think I'm qualified to talk about it. I'm level 8 at this point. I know last week you mentioned that you had already hit cap.
The level cap is level 12. I hit level 12. I want to say that we've had a pretty completionist playthrough. We hit level cap pretty early into Act 3, to be honest with you. And I think that a lot of that is a reflection of our sort of my obsessive desire to do like everything, right? Because you get these little warnings when you're going to move on or whatever. Every time I got that warning, I went back and we did a bunch more stuff, right? But I feel like the level cap is really there for like, if you're somebody who's essentially just kind of playing through the main level of the game, you're not exhausting every nook and cranny, going and finding every possible battle you can fight. You're probably gonna reach level cap sort of deeper into the end game.
That makes sense to me. But yeah, before we get into spoilery territory, because I think, I don't know that we need to we can probably talk about a lot of the mechanics without spoilers, but like, what do you think of the game so far? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Thumbs up. Definitely thumbs up. Definitely good. I would have probably said this is like game of the year material, just like loving every absolute second of it before that level cap just like destroyed me. Which is maybe my own fault in a certain way, like disappointment is unmet expectations, right? And when you're playing a game like this, you have an expectation that it's going to go all the way, right? That'll go all the way to 20. It feels like you're playing an adventure campaign or whatever. I was thinking in terms of going all the way to 20, even if I wasn't necessarily kind of like acting on it, right? Like, it's not like I was planning out full 20 level builds. I was never really like looking anything up or anything like that, right? I was mostly just kind of, using my innate knowledge of like understanding kind of these RPGs or whatever. But yeah, even though I'm certainly fundamentally disappointed that we didn't get all the way to level 20 in this one, it's still a very good game.
Yeah,
like a truly great game.
I think it's still a very strong game of the year contender. Like, obviously I didn't have the disappointment because I knew going into it was going to be capped at 12. But I am also kind of getting to the point, like I get this way in a lot of games where it's like I've gotten to the point where it's like I am tired of doing like all this like content, right? Like again, to keep it relatively spoiler free, there are 2 ways to go from Act 1 to Act 2. I did it one way. I picked up something in Act 2 that was like there's this place in the other route that you could go to discover some stuff. And I looked at that and I was like, I don't want to do that, and so I'm not going to do that. Uh, and so like that kind of thing has started to get to me, and so I'm just kind of like more pushing through to like do the actual things that happen in the story. But yeah, I think it's very good. I think that a, I think I I think that Act One is obviously more polished than Act Two, and I assume that's further true for Act Three. Um, a lot
Oh,
of
that's absolutely untrue. Act 3 is brutally unpolished, actually, I would say.
that agrees with
Oh,
what
wait, I'm sorry. Does
I
that yeah,
yeah,
okay, yeah,
I'm
yeah. I
saying
I
Act One is the most polished because it had
correct.
literal early access. Act Two is less polished, and I assume it's even less polished than Act Three. Um, and like I think a lot of the things that make the game really exceptional, right? The consideration of like all the different ways you could theoretically do something that like make the game so special in Act One. Those types of considerations start to fall off the further you get into the game. I think just because you have less iteration time for the developers, that kind of thing. Doesn't mean it's still not a very special game that like probably gets close to the core tabletop experience than any other game, but like um also I think as you interact with systems more you can see the edges of it more, right? Like it's less magical. Um
Yeah.
but still very very good and probably the best representation of a tabletop experience I have had in a video game.
Oh, man, do I think it's better than Kingmaker? The only other this is the real comparison point for me, is I played Pathfinder Kingmaker last year and this year, and I got really sucked into it both times. And a really crazy thing happened to me with getting sucked into Kingmaker, which is that I fell back into an old save effortlessly, which was crazy. That like never happens to me, right? Like if I don't play a game for 6 months and then I come back to it, generally speaking, I want to restart, and
Right.
kind of do a full playthrough from the beginning. If I come back to Total War, I'm gonna make a new campaign. If I come back to Stellaris, I'm gonna make a new campaign, right? If I'm gonna play something, even like a narrative game, like I don't know, like an Assassin's Creed or something like that. A lot of the times, I'll end up kind of like making a new game and kind of playing through it to like get back into things. But I put so much time into Kingmaker. There's like 80 hours since I'm like I'm not gonna replay fucking 80 hours of this thing. Um, and I don't want to say that I didn't get hooked by Baldur's Gate the same way that I did by Kingmaker. To be fair, I haven't even finished Kingmaker. I fell off of Kingmaker deep into that game. We're deep into sort of book 6 of Kingmaker. My characters are all level 17, maybe level 18 or something like that, like getting on to like level 20 kind of thing. Um, uh, but yeah, maybe here's what I would say. It is Those are two good comparison points for kinds of tabletop experiences, I guess. Because the
Sure.
thing that Baldur's Gate really does and helps you with, right, is facilitating the kooky shit that happens in tabletop that could never happen anywhere else. And I think this is actually part of why the dev time for it is so uh long and storied, right? The game was in early access for 3 years. It was in development for 6. Um, and whenever I complain about the level cap, people have always said, they can't do everything." And I always point to Kingmaker. I'm like, Kingmaker did everything. Owlcat is a much smaller studio, right? Working under much, different sort of like confines or whatever, but they went all the way to like level 20. If Baldur's Gate wanted to go to level 20, they could. But the thing about Baldur's Gate is they wanted to, respect the kinds of things that in an RPG, in a tabletop setting, you could go, I want to talk to animals, the squirrel, right? And it recorded VO for all of that, right? It helps, it creates a good and an evil path to get through the game with relatively similar sorts of goals. All of those sorts of like choices and decisions that you can make, that's a very tabletop RPG experience. You're never really gonna that's not something that's gonna get replicated in something like Kingmaker, because like there are villains. There is no version of things where you don't end up fighting the, you know, in
Yeah,
Pytax or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like you can fight him a couple of different ways. You can be a dick about it. You can be neutral evil and fight him. You could be chaotic good and fight him. And those are two different ways to kind of like go about it, but you're not like fundamentally restructuring the narrative of the story, which is something that Baldur's Gate
yeah, which is kind of
facilitates.
funny because like that is a thing, like being able to fundamentally restructure the narrative of the story is a thing that is true of tabletop games, but not all tabletop games, because like I have found that the adventure paths don't kind of allow you that flexibility without a lot of work on the GM side, at which
Mhm.
point, why are you doing an adventure path, right? Like, um, but yes, I guess I agree with you, right? Like,
Like, yeah, like there's no version of Kingmaker where you are not fighting for the overall goal of establishing your kingdom in the Stolen Lands and driving out these threats to that kingdom. You can do that in maybe in the like Mass Effect is an okay example, even though Kingmaker is sort of more than Mass Effect in certain ways. You can do that by being, like I said, lawful evil. You can do it by being chaotic good, but um actually, when I make that comparison, because Baldur's Gate, well, I don't know. All this
yeah,
stuff is
so,
complicated,
so,
I
so
guess.
so part of the issue here, I think, is that like, something like Kingmaker, and I haven't played the game, so feel free to disabuse me of this notion, but like I have played through that campaign entirely on the
Yeah,
tabletop. Um,
correct.
and part of that like thing there is that like the things that are your antagonists are antagonists to you regardless of like your general disposition, right? Um like you could play through as an evil party and it wouldn't matter for the villains, right? Because they're just a competing force, right? It's not like a good versus evil story. And in that kind of way, right, the resolution of the Kingmaker story is about establishing your kingdom, and um how like the attitude of that kingdom is kind of set dressing, right? Like it doesn't interact with the core mechanics of the game. Whereas Baldur's Gate does at least have the thing where like there are like several alternate endpoints, which is similar to a Mass Effect, right? Where like you can along the way make decisions that will affect the ending, right? In a way that is more than set dressing, right? Like,
Okay, so that's interesting. I would think Kingmaker is better about that, at least in the CRPG version, right? Because the fundamental character of your kingdom can be pretty fundamentally different, right? And mostly this is just about like who you end up with and how you end up dealing with them, right? In terms of stuff like companions, right?
okay, I see.
There's companions of all these different varieties, right? But it's also like who you recruit, right? You can recruit. I'm running a true I'm sorry, not true neutral, a lawful neutral kingdom in my Kingmaker campaign because that's my favorite alignment. Okay, I
Sure.
think lawful
Yeah.
neutral is a fun alignment, and that means that I have picked up some people and done some like quests or whatever that are sort of towards that alignment that put me in a weirdly different position than someone who is going a more chaotic route, right? Um, and that will probably, I mean, to be fair, I haven't seen like ending credits. I'm sure that I'm going to play towards the ending in the way that I don't remember like Fallout 3 is sort of like this. Fallout 3, you're kind of playing to collect cutscenes at the end, right?
Sure.
You do
Yeah.
the more side quests you do, the more your ending cutscenes matter or whatever. I think Baldur's Gate is pretty similar. I imagine Kingmaker is also going to end up being like pretty similar to that. The thing that Kingmaker doesn't do that Baldur's Gate does is allow you to mess with the plot structure of the game, which
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
is interesting, right? Um, and and it basically does that by playing much more like a Bethesda game, funnily enough, right? It lets you ally to certain people, um, and against other people, lets you kind of pick sides, or have different ways that you tackle problems, where Kingmaker you have a little bit of that, but it kind of at the end of the day you're going to end up playing these dungeon set pieces as dungeon set pieces sort of no matter what. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, but that's what I mean by the kind of like the set dressing difference is where it mostly is, right? Like your city might have like a golden shield on it or a pair of devil horns, but at the end of the day, it's a city in like the River Kingdoms, and you push out your the people that are trying to stop you from establishing that kingdom, right? And like obviously that has broader implications, but like Baldur's Gate lets you do, like you said, like I like the way you put it, like mess with the plot structure, right? Like, you are able to kind of like fundamentally mess with like the flow of how that goes in a way that you couldn't at tabletop, right? Like in
Yep.
a true tabletop, and with a GM that was willing to work with you on that, right? It's like, well, what if we, to use an example from our own past, like what if we, allied with Barzillai Thrune and like exploited the fact that he is primarily afraid of being forgotten and wiped out, rather than being like his prime motivation being like the oppression of people, right? And we can work with that person. And whereas like if you don't account for that if the programmers don't account for that eventuality, you can't do that in a tabletop or in a computer.
Yeah,
RPG.
this makes sense to me. The Owlcat version of Hell's Rebels doesn't include that possibility, but the Larian version of Hell's Rebels probably does.
Yes,
right?
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And I think part of that is, and this is sort of the question of trade-off, right? If I'm thinking in those sorts of terms, it is pretty complicated to be able to mess with the plot structure and keep your game intact along
Right.
those sorts of lines, which is why I think Baldur's Gate ends at 12, even though it had way more people working on it for way longer,
Right.
compared to Kingmaker ending at 20, even though there are far fewer people who worked on it for like far less time, right? And I don't know, and really my thing is to wrap this all the way back to the beginning, is I don't know whether or not I think that trade-off is worth it, right? I think 12, I don't know, maybe it's just something about playing at level cap for as long as I have. But there's just something really draining to my motivation to getting all this experience, and it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, it's part of it is also that like the actual like the beyond like the story motivation is its own thing, and like I'm thinking about like a game that we play at cap a lot, which is World of Warcraft, right? Like
True.
we've been playing that game at cap for like cumulatively over the course of the expansions, like probably years, right? Like and the motivation there has always come thing kind of like I don't want to like something that's not experience based, but there is its own motivation, right? Like better gear, mounts,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Whereas I guess Baldur's Gate has like story discovery and gear, but the gear is not a clear enough like when we do something in WoW, we know that there's gear at the end of the tunnel that will be relevant. I think it's this is also a problem I have with Skyrim at a certain point, right? Is like I am doing this whole dungeon, and there might not even be something at the end of it that I care about. And part of it for Skyrim is that like the magical items don't have that much character to them, typically. Maybe like the shouts, which is which was kind of like the big thing there, and like and BG3 I think has a better set of items, but like it's another touch point would be like Elden Ring, right? Like Elden Ring doesn't really have a level cap, but there's also like a point of diminishing returns, right? And I hit this point in Elden Ring too, where it's like I don't want to keep doing this side content anymore. I want to start to like finish things out. But like at the end of every dungeon, I knew I was getting something, right? Like I might not use it, but it's something that like somebody would find useful. Whereas like Baldur's Gate, that's probably true for Baldur's Gate, but that's not much less explicit, right? Like there's probably a piece of loot at the end of it that will be useful for someone somewhere, but like it's like
yeah, it's like, and a lot of the times it's going to be like someone in your party if you make it work kind of thing, right?
Right.
A lot of loot in Baldur's Gate I have found to be kind of interesting because like I don't know that I expect it. I guess the complicated thing for me in loot in Baldur's Gate is I have been kind of at my end game for the game for a long time, also in terms of loot. I did pick up some like extra stuff. I don't know, how deep are we in spoilers? Do we do a spoiler warning? I don't know.
Let's put a spoiler warning here, right? This is
Yeah,
where we have to start talking.
spoiler warning here, right? Once I finally did reach Baldur's Gate itself, I got access to a bunch of shops, right? It's a city, you can go to a bunch of different shops. We basically went to every single shop, and every single shop has some very rare item that's like cool and good, right? And one of them is like, I can think of one piece of gear. Actually, I think I can think of two pieces of gear that I swapped out. I picked up new armor. I'm playing a rogue in that game. I picked up new armor, and I picked up a cloak, right? But like all my other stuff is stuff that I brought with me from Act 1, Act 2, basically. And there's not something, and maybe that's just like not as like fun and engaging as kind of I don't know. Just like there was something about killing a guy, seeing the little 300 experience pop up was satisfying. And then once that stops being satisfying, it frustrates me, I guess.
Yeah, no, I get that, and the way you typically deal with that is you offer some either alternate or like parallel reward that makes the content still worth doing, and I think part of there are some quests that are interesting in Baldur's Gate, and there's some that are not so much, right? And like the story driven ones, I like the ones about the characters I care about. I could probably do an easier job with, but like again, spoilers, but like there's like a dude in Act 2 that's like, go find this ledger that proves that this dead person is guilty. And then you go back to him and it was like, this is whatever, right? Like, but I was in that area anyway for like the actual quest, and I went back to him and I got into a fight with him and I killed him, and it's like I didn't need to do this quest, right? Like I'm not mad that I did it because I'm not like you know, wasn't at like the kind of burnout phase for that, but like I think you're right about the completionist part of it too, is like there are things that would be fun to do every once in a while, but if you insist on doing every single one of them, I think you're gonna like feel the pain, I guess.
Yeah, this is something that Kingmaker tackles in a different way, which I think is pretty interesting, which is that, you know, I would actually say this isn't a Kingmaker thing. It pops into my head, but really it's a lot of stuff, which is that most of the experience comes from quest completions, right? It doesn't come from killing monsters. Most of your experience, or in my feeling, right? Most of the experience I got to level through Baldur's Gate came from killing rooms of guys, right? Which is why I said my obsessive desires, and you know, Rachel's in the chat, you know, asking if I was collecting chunks off that one guy. We went to, did you do the Githyanki Kresh?
No, that is actually the thing I was referring to when I said I
found a thing.
I found a thing in Act 2 that was like, you can go find it in the Mountain Pass, and I did the Underdark to get to Act 2.
Sure.
And I was like, and actually to give a fuller story, I like was like, oh, maybe I'll go check it out. And then I went to when I clicked on to go to the Mountain Pass, it told me that Halson had left to go do something else, which I think is a bug. But like I also like got into a fight with like some revenants. I'm like, I don't want to do this, and I reloaded the game. And I just was like, I don't want to. I'm just not going to do the Githyanki stuff this playthrough. I'll maybe do it if I play it again.
Yeah. So we went to the Githyanki Kresh, and you know, we're playing a pretty interesting. I like the way that we're playing the game, but it is, you know, kind of interesting. We just end up fighting everybody, but like for good. We're kind of good murder hobos, which is to say that like if we show up somewhere and somebody gives us a bunch of shit, it's like, you know what, fucking die, you dick, you idiot, you know, like that kind of a thing, right? And that sort of was what ended up happening at the Githyanki Kresh. We were hanging out. It's pretty clearly meant to be like a quest hub. There's a bunch of stuff you can do there or whatever, but they were just dicks. And so we ended up getting in a fight with someone, and we were like, you know what? The whole Kresh is hostile to us. We could revert to the save, or we could just start killing. And we just fucking killed everybody in the stupid Githyanki Kresh. And that included, as we were walking on our way out, we had basically murdered everybody. We turned this sort of town into a dungeon and murdered everyone in there, right? As we were on our way out, I was like, oh, there's this room with the Githyanki youths in there who are trained, like they're a bunch of they're like little kids fighting, right? Like Githyanki, not kids, they're called youths, but they're adults, right? And I was like, we should go kill them. And Rachel was like, buddy, no, they're kids. Why? And I was like, for the experience, because the experience matters to me, okay? And I just like went through, and I went in and I aggroed them or whatever, and we fucking murdered, or we massacred these children who are
these younglings,
you know, in class basically. Yeah, okay, Anakin. Yeah, it's a very Anakin Skywalker moment. But you know what? You know, my philosophy is, if the fucking kids in the Jedi Temple had aggroed Anakin Skywalker when he walked in, right, instead of going, please, Lord Skywalker, save us, maybe I would have been more on Anakin's side, okay? Like, that's kind of my philosophy, right? If I walk in sightline and those little kids start attacking me with their training swords, I just, like, My sympathies have run out.
Yeah, I'm just imagining like a small child running up to you with a plastic sword and being like, "Ah, I'm gonna get you, bad man," and like tapping you lightly with a plastic sword, and you're just like punting them.
To be honest, we almost wiped, actually. That fight was really hard. And it's because the little kids have their instructor. I have to actually, this is a good story. I need to introduce you to Dortech. The little kids had this instructor who was like the real bad guy. He's like the drill instructor in this room. He's being a dick. He like tells one of the kids to murder the other kid in their training regimen. He's like, we can always spawn more Githyanki or whatever. It's like, okay, fucking Hitler. Shit. Okay. That guy has this ability, and I'm pretty sure it's like a bonus action or something. Maybe this is just a bug, to be honest with you, where he buffs one of the kids. He gives them like 40 temporary HP and makes them do a bunch of extra damage, right? So we're getting these little kids are coming at us with their plastic sword and then absolutely stomping our shit, right? And to be clear, we never long rest. Like we hate resting in this game. I have done this game on like 6 long rests, maybe, right? we had finished with the dungeon. And we had finished with the dungeon and we were on our way out. We're all at like 3 HP or whatever. And then fucking this like little ankle biter, you know, Githyanki with his training sword is walloping me for all of my health. And the way that we figured out how to deal with it is the instructor was in the room and he was yelling out in the hallway to buff them, right? And we just kept closing the door so he didn't have line of sight on the kids. And then he would run up and he would open the door, but he wouldn't cast his bullshit spell. And I was like, maybe opening the door is a bonus action or something like that. It's like taking his action or whatever else. So we just kept closing the door on him and then we killed all the kids and then we killed him. Oh, Dortech is best tech. Yeah, we use Dortech in a number of different situations in order to do exactly this kind. Actually, the very first time we used Dortech was also in the Githyanki crash. Because we were in a room, someone had aggroed us, right? One of the Githyanki had aggroed us because of our dialogue choices, all this other sort of stuff. So we killed her. And we were like, okay. And then we opened the door and everyone on the other side of the room are all aggroed against us. And we're just like, oh shit, our party is fucked. We need to rest. We're so boned. So we just opened the door and then closed the door. And then we just kind of hid behind it so that they kept running in one by one and we just like choke pointed them or whatever. Yeah, anyway, the Githyanki crushes. I don't know why I'm telling the story. It's just funny.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's like kind of the thing that like is the strength of the game, right? Like people want to tell stories about like things they did, creative ways they solved problems, or like surprising ways that like the game supports things that like, you know, makes you feel good about like, I thought of this clever way to do it and it worked.
Yeah, I you know, by the way, I want to correct myself because I remember what it was. It is not that it takes an action to open the door. It's that it took an action for him to cast this spell thing. But when an NPC is on the other side of a door and they don't detect an enemy in range, they dash as their action for the turn before opening the door. So we were really taking advantage of the bad AI of the game.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean? Because they sense there's no enemies nearby. I need to get in range. They dash and then they open the door and they don't move and they just attack or they just do nothing.
Yes, because they dash as their first action instead of like moving and dashing like a player would.
Yeah.
The Act 2 town are you talking about like light? Lou in the chat says, how have we been Act 2 town? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We've both been to Last Light, I believe. If you're in Act 3,
no. Yeah. We kept Last Light. Yeah. Last Light was fine. They were nice to us. Yeah. We had no issues with Last Light.
Did you manage to keep the priestess from being taken away?
Yeah. Well, yeah. By fucking save scumming. Okay. That was insane. She got taken away and we killed everybody. And, but Jahira is mean to you. Did you kill her? No. I know the thing that happened with Jahira was somebody was there. I think one of our companions was there or something and just like vouched for us. And then no, we had this is what it was. We had saved a bunch of harpers along the path and Jahira was mean to us and entangled us or whatever, but then those harpers showed up and they were like, wait, this person saved our lives. And she went, good. And then we were friends. So that's what happened there. But yeah, when the fucking cleric gets yeeted or whatever, and everybody succumbs to the shadow curse, we just fucking save scummed because we were like, okay, and then we just didn't do that quest because we were like, I don't know that I can save her from Marcus, so we just did literally every other quest on the map until we had to do that one to progress. And then by that point, we just like absolutely murder hoboed like Marcus. We had like leveled up a bunch of times and we kicked his ass, kind of thing. I don't know what happens if the opposite happens. But yeah.
Yeah, so I only had to reload once. I just like did a little bit of positioning beforehand. And like you can beat Marcus himself down pretty easily. But like he gets like like I saw the cutscene, she gets carried away. And I assume you have to rescue her. But
yeah, the problem with her getting carried away is it turns everybody else into undead.
Oh really?
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, we cast Invis on her.
I did something similar, but she immediately broke it.
I mean, yeah, part of it was also just that like that was another fight that we took. We hadn't long rested yet or whatever. We were just exploring and talking to everybody, and that whole thing just happens the second you go and talk to her in the first place or whatever. So yeah, that was kind of one of the things we'll end up doing a lot because we don't like long resting is we will save stuff for the long rest. It's like, okay, well, it's like you want to get as much out of every rest as you possibly can. It's like, well, you know, we can still do more stuff. We still have hit points or whatever. And so we'll go back out into the Shadow Curse, do all this other sort of stuff. The thing that was crazy for us about the Shadow Curse lands was the convoy or the little did you do that with the Drider?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the thing with the Drider, we let the Drider just walk past. We were like, we'll get back to this. And then we basically fucking forgot about it. And then we long rested and he disappears. So you need that crazy moon lantern to do the rest of the Shadow Curse lands or whatever. But we didn't fucking have the moon lantern. We couldn't get it. And so we had to do some brutal stuff in order to figure out how to make that work. Basically that was just like me stealthing through the like Giga Shadow part until I found Moonlight Towers where there are those moon lanterns on the 6 and it kind of like saves you.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I have not found another moon lantern yet, but or another functional moon lantern. I basically
Did you go to Moonrise Towers?
I have. Last time I saved, I had just gotten to Moonrise Towers. So the thing I was referring to is I did the temple first, and I got to the part that said go to the Shadowfell. And it's like you advance the story if you go to the Shadowfell. I'm like, well, I guess I got to go back and do everything else.
That is really interesting. Yeah, we did that temple dead last.
See, like, I did it first because I thought it was like semi-optional, and I was like, I like Shadowheart. I want to, Shadowheart. I'm doing Shadowheart waifu for this run, right? Sure. Might as well do that. That way she can be happy, and maybe she will give me a nice hug, at sleepy time. She, then I hit the Shadowfell and it was like it's gonna advance the story. I'm like, oh, this is kind of bullshit, and I had to go and do everything else. By the way, I managed to, without save scumming, defeat the barkeep and the tax collector with social checks, which was hilarious.
Oh, interesting. We did, without save scumming, the barkeep and the doctor with just social checks.
Oh, I did the doctor too. That's right. I forgot about the doctor.
Did you do him with social checks?
Yeah, but he was easy. Okay. Right? He was like, tell like, I guess that for me it was easy. I think it was like an intelligence check or something. And I'm a wizard.
Oh yeah, what are you playing? What's your class? You're playing wizard?
Yeah, wizard.
Okay.
And so he was particularly easy. He was like, tell him that he has to be this. I didn't even realize what I was doing. It was like, tell them to practice on you. I was like, okay, maybe that's a thing. And then they just like stabbed him to death hard, right? That was just like, what? But the other ones I managed to get lucky. I had like not a ton of inspiration, but it just kind of worked.
How do you socially defeat the tax collector? We fought the tax collector.
I intimidated her twice. Like I told her she was corrupt, and like honestly, it was pure luck. It's like a 21 intimidation check, and I hit it. and then she's like, corruption, no, and then she explodes. Like, you know, kind of like the other ones where like they just kind of like die. But yeah, got a lot of gold out of her.
Yeah, I got so fucked. We saved cupped on her because her fight mechanic is actually pretty clever, but like super fucking funny when you are like me and you have. I just am sitting on a gazillion gold, right? Because her stuff does more damage the more gold you have. So she came down and she just like one shot me. And I was like, oh fuck. And so then we did then I just put my gold in camp or whatever, and we came back and did it again, kind of thing.
I presumably you could just like hand it to her, right, and then attack her.
Yeah, but I don't want to give that bitch my money.
Okay.
You know what? Yeah. This is part of our thinking of just like good aligned murder hobos, right? We've also done a bunch of other murder hobo stuff that like I guess I don't want to spoil it. This is sort of like closer to Act 3 or whatever. But like one of the big things is that we don't like the Illithid powers. Are you doing Illithid powers?
No, I haven't even opened the interface for that.
Yeah, we don't even have access to the interface for that, because when the guy is like, you should really think about sucking down some tadpoles, we were like, no, shut the fuck up, don't ever ask me again. And so we don't even have the button.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't either. So I got one Illithid power in the Underdark because I talked to the free Illithid down there, and if you complete his quest, he will like do a thing to try and extract it, and it will end up giving you a power.
There's a free Illithid power down there?
And there is an Illithid that is free of the collective. He's in the Mushroom Town. Did you miss this? Or have you been to the Mushroom Town?
Yeah, we did the whole Mushroom Town. Did we miss this, Rachel? Do you remember a fucking Illithid in that town?
Yeah, that one. Lou, Omaloom. He's near like the Hobgoblin who's nice.
There's no way. What? How on earth? I sell to that Hobgoblin every like 5 seconds. I sold so much of my shit to that Hobgoblin.
Yeah, I talked to him, and there was an option. He's like, "Do you want to talk to my friend?" I'm like, "Okay." And his friend comes over. It's the Mind Flayer. And he's like, "I am free of the influence."
Oh nope! I understand. We said no. I said no. I don't want to do that. I think is what ended up happening. So yeah, we probably like cut ourselves off from.
Yeah, no, he is one of the early like Act 1 kind of like, maybe this is a way to get the fucking thing out of your brain, right? And you do a thing for him, and he tries to extract it, and it's like, turns out it made it stronger, and it gives you a power. But I have not eaten any parasites.
Yeah, we are perpetually distrustful of our Dream Guardian and all of this stuff.
Same.
And so, in fact, there's actually there's actually a sort of a part of lore that you're missing a little bit without the Githyanki Kresh that relates to some of this stuff that I guess I won't spoil. The Githyanki Kresh is also a place where you can extract. Late Cell obviously talks about it, where you can like extract the thing or whatever. But all of these places where you can extract the thing, it doesn't fucking work for obvious reasons, because like the game is sort of reliant on it or whatever. Oh, but yeah.
Volo's method is the best method. Yeah.
What's Volo's method?
He tries to ice pick. Yeah. So like he did like the start of it for me. I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm not doing this. And then he like ran away, even though my quest log says he will be a bard that you can recruit. It's like, well, I guess he didn't like that. I didn't trust him to like, shove an ice pick in my eye. Yeah.
Well, I feel you. I talked to him briefly, and he was like, I'm the only bard this camp, and Owen was like, I'm the only bard this camp needs. Yeah, it's because Rachel's playing a bard. Rachel's playing a bard, I'm playing a rogue. But we rotate around the other companions pretty liberally. We spend a lot of time with Karlach, because Rachel likes Karlach, so we're pretty martial party, which is part of the like no long resting thing, right? Because it's just like, why, long resting is for lamos, because I'm Henry for Karlach. Yep, very Henry.
Yeah, my party is Karlach, Shadowheart, Gale, which is like not an optimal party.
2 wizards.
Yeah, it's because Gale's a bro, but Astarion's a fuck card. I like Astarion.
I I respect Asterion to monk though, because I was like, we just didn't use Asterion because I'm a rogue. Obviously, I'm doing the rogue stuff. And I was just like, you know what, buddy, like you you can be you can be a monk and you can be in the party sometimes now.
Yeah, Karlach is greater than Shadowheart. Karlach's like all nice and whatnot. Like there's nothing. There's no work there. There's no one I need to save. Lou. Karlach is a strong, independent woman that don't need no men. I would not insult her.
It's like I can fix him, but like the male version. Yeah, I don't know. I actually, this is maybe one of the first RPGs you don't have any like I'm going it alone. Okay, I don't have any crush. Late Cell, I was pretty on board for Late Cell at first. She was like, "I'm horny for you." I was like, "I'm kind of into this," and then she said something, and I was like, "I'm no longer into this."
I saw a clip on Twitter that was like Asterion says to I guess the player character, get on your knees, and the character just kicked him in the balls.
I would kick him in the balls. He leaves the party if you do that.
I mean, I just like basically don't talk to the characters that are in my party. I just like don't care.
Do you not like Will?
I mean, I like Will. Like, if there was space in the party, I'd probably pick up Will, but like he's not as much of a bro as Gale. So
I like Will. Will might weirdly be my. No way, I'm real about this. Is Will my favorite companion? Maybe, I don't know. We have like we have all the companions except for there. You know about Minthara, right? You can get the Drow Paladin from Act 1 if you kill the Grove rather than.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, we learned that because we did an evil playthrough where we helped the goblins kill the Grove, like attack the Grove, and
I guess it's Minthara or Halsin is what you get.
Yeah, essentially it's Minthara or Halsin, and I'm also sure that there's no way Minthara and Jaheira will work together.
Yeah, I was we watched Josh's Dragon Work. Yeah, fuck my Minthara.
Not. By the way, I need to say this for Josh's Dragonborn is a gold Dragonborn. Okay, he is shiny. It was so funny. We were all in a Discord call together, and we're watching this giant bright gold dragon get fucked by this drow. Oh my god! You know what? Honestly, the funniest part is that it's Josh. It's like it's him who's getting it, that who's getting it in. God, that was funny. I kind of want to go back. I want to play the evil game. Race and I have said we're going to play an evil game when we're done with our main game because of the Dark Urge, which I did not know at the time, is a pretty radical change to how you approach the game as an origin. I didn't really realize what the Dark Urge was when I saw it in the Origins or whatever.
Yeah, no, I kind of want to. So part of this is part of the reason to get back to Will, where I'm not as big on Will, is like there is a character I play in a 5e game that I want. Like my current character is a character I play in a PF2e game, a version of it, and I want to do a run with a dwarf warlock that uses a hammer, right? Which is like my 5e character, and it's like Will is basically that, but slightly different, right? Like the martial, the Gishi warlock, right? Like I'm like, well, I don't need you because I want to actually do this character. Right, because that's the character I'm playing, and so I don't want to pay too close attention to Will. Not because I have anything against Will, just because, like, not what I want to do. Yeah.
How do you feel about the story so far? Are you like engaged on like the plot level and all this Illithid stuff?
Yeah, just in kind of like I'm much more attached to the character stories, right? Like, like I don't know a ton about. I used to know a lot about some of the Faerun lore, but like I specifically don't really know anything about Shar, and like I'm getting the impression that Shar is not a great person or a great god, right? Like a good god, right? And so like I'm kind of like I wonder where they're going with the Shadowheart thing, right? Because she's like supposed to be like a obviously she's like the kind of like protagonist character, right? Like and so I wonder, like, she's not like an evil character, right? Like, there were, I remember in Baldur's Gate 1, there were evil characters that you could recruit very early on. And like obviously like Minthara is an evil character as you mentioned, right? But like Shadowheart is like not like an evil is not an evil character in that way at least.
The crazy thing about Shadowheart that's funny is a friend of mine who's been playing through the game. Did you do the memory quest for like the guy, the dwarf?
What I don't know if I what memory quest for
There's
the
a
dwarf?
dwarf in the mushroom town who wants. There's
Oh,
a woman, yeah, and she wants you to get a
yeah, because
special
she's lost her.
mushroom.
She's lost her memories, right? And there's a thing that can restore his memories, and she's like, he abused me when he was when he had his mind, so I don't want to restore him.
Yeah, that's what we said. We were like, you know what? I'm not on board with this or whatever. But a friend of mine did that quest and gave the mushroom to Shadowheart, and it like fucks with her like memory loss from the Shar worshippers or whatever. And I was like, oh my god, I wish I had done that. That's like actually kind of crazy.
Yeah, I
Um,
never found the mushroom that restores it. Like I just kind of like remember her mentioning it, and I just like figured I might run into it at some point.
yeah. Yeah, you know, I don't know. Char, and I like the Char stuff, and I like the Saluna stuff. Like two gods that are sort of like equal opposites to one another. Is cute and fun, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, that stuff is I'm reasonably connected to it. The interesting thing to me about this story is that it doesn't feel rote. Because of all this like stuff with the mind flayer. I feel like I am making there are a lot of decisions that we end up making that feel really impactful because you have no idea. Like I'm just like, I don't know where this is going. Let's see, right? Kind of thing. Which is really neat and really interesting.
Yeah,
Even though at the end of the day it does play a little bit more like a railroad than I kind of want in a way. It Which is maybe a little bit of just like main story stuff that you haven't necessarily seen yet because you haven't fought Ketheric Thorm or anything like,
not yet.
yeah, all that stuff is it's like a whole thing, but that to me feels like very stereotypical D&D where there's a big bad evil guy kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although it is kind of funny to me that like multiple of my party members have been like, by the way, you're gonna die at the end of the story, right? Like, and so who knows how that'll actually end out. I assume there's going to be a way to make them not actually die, or at least they'll get like a poignant ending or something. Part of this is that like the patch notes have been like, and Karlach gets a slightly different ending. It's like, I wonder what that's about. But
Did y'all defeat Ketheric without paladin intervention? Yeah, basically. I don't know what you're necessarily talking about, but Ketheric, we kind of kicked Ketheric's ass. We cleared Moonrise Towers like a dungeon. We went in and we killed everybody basically in Moonrise Towers, which is also part of our like there was just like one point where I tripped up and I aggroed somebody and the whole is the same thing as the Githyanki Chris. It's like the whole tower aggroed against me basically. And I was like, you know what? We'll just fucking like sleaze our way. We had like an hour and a half long fight where we were just like slaughtering these people. Which I think is part of how the game, because this is sort of the same thing that the Goblin Camp was, right? Where it's like it's supposed to be a place where you kind of engage neutrally, but we ended up just sort of fighting everyone.
yeah, no, I mean, I had a couple of fun moments like that, right? Like in Grimforge, I initially was like friendly, and then when it like became time to like actually resolve like the thing with the gnomes, I was like, I don't want to do this big fight initially, so I just like started sneaking around and like punting people off of edges, until someone caught me, and then I just had the fight out.
We did a thing. Our Grimforge journey was really fun. We discovered the adamantine forge before any of our friends, and we did that really early. We did that like at level like 5.
I think I did
Just
too.
because the thing with the adamantine forge that we didn't realize is that we took a kind of back way to get back there, and it was just some night. And this is the highlight of the game for me, right? Doing the adamantine forge is the kind of shit that made it feel like a true D&D sort of thing. We're fighting this guy. We were going through it. We didn't really understand. We were just like, man, this is going to take forever. This is an insane boss fight. And then at some point, Rachel was like, oh, you have to hit him with the hammer. And I was like, oh. And so from then it was just like, oh, I completely understand.
I was actually just going to look to see if you had the achievement of kill him without the hammer, because I didn't even discover that. I just like basically what I did is like I set like I always just had Gale attack last, right? And so the thing would like start to walk over to Gale, right? Like I just had Gale like keep like kiting essentially the boss, and then Karlach would just like slam him with the hammer for a bunch of damage. And
so you killed him without using the big hammer.
Yeah.
But then he gets into that like earthquake phase.
Earthquake. What do you mean?
He gets into when he gets low enough, he does this earthquake thing that just hits everybody for damage.
Maybe
that was the part that made it complicated for us, which is why we were like, oh god, let's use the hammer.
Maybe I managed to just like power through, kill him, because I switched weapons on Karlach to use like something that like the bludgeoning damage to kind of like deal with the weakness. I basically just was able to power through it, right? Like,
oh, interesting, right? How using the bludgeoning damage? Okay, I see.
Yeah, I like honestly Karlach. If I went and measured it, I bet you Karlach does like 60% of my party's total damage. Like,
see, yeah, that's part of it, is that our party, I do almost all the damage because I'm just like getting these insane sneak attacks for like huge damage, basically.
Yeah, I mean Karlach is doing frenzy and just like whop whop whop.
Yeah, my thing is we start a lot of fights just with me stealthing, and I just attack someone from stealth, and I just beat their asses. Lae'zel is my one-on-one beast. Yeah, Lae'zel is insane. The weakest members of my party are like Will seems pretty weak to me. Will is weak in the way that Gish characters are pretty weak, which is just that like, you know, it's hard to do both. Rachel, you're mega medium weak. Rachel is always doing the important shit though, like in the fight, right? Like if somebody needs to like hit the lever or something or do door tech, then that's real.
Yeah, I am in like my character is essentially like the semi-useless character in my party, because it's like I'm gonna do punches and electric touches, but like I also like shove things off of stuff, and I use knock a lot outside of combat. Like I feel like that's like I use the spell knock to unlock things. Although not as much anymore, because I discovered that like Karlach is now strong enough to just basically break anything.
Oh, because you can break through the doors. That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
And the chests. Apparently there's like no risk of damaging anything except for like a couple of specific chests.
Huh.
Yeah, which I think
my sleight of hand is insane. Like that is my like super juiced skill or whatever. So I just I just keep block picking everything. I went on honestly like for about an hour, I went on this whole crusade where I just lock picked everything like with these potions of invisibility or whatever. This is all in Act 3. I won't spoil any of it, but just like remind me in a couple of weeks to talk about it, because that was also incredibly fun. But at that point, I was basically just playing like a stealth archer from fucking Skyrim, right? You know, like I was just like, you know, stealing a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, so the interesting thing is Lou says if you engage with this ranged sneak attack, you get a free second one when combat starts. I tend to murder one dude right off. That's the assassin archetype, right? For rogue or whatever. I am playing thief, which I have grown to love because thief gets an extra bonus action. And so when I'm in fights, I get 2 offhand attacks, which I find to be really useful with hand crossbows. I have these two insane hand crossbows or whatever. The offhand attack can be like super nutty. Essentially doing a full attack action can be super nutty with rogue, and allows me to re-stealth in combat in ways I find like really useful, which I think is good. I think that there's like a lot of variety for how, you know, like characters can be built that are fun and engaging. Even though I don't know that I would ever want to go arcane trickster. That seems
I mean, I know it's useful in a real 5e game. I'm playing like
really?
Yeah, my friend June is playing a character that is a drow arcane trickster, archer. Basically, he uses it for mostly like utility stuff rather than for like combat effectiveness stuff. But
Sure.
oh, I had a question about a specific thing. In the Shadowfell Temple, how did you deal with Raphael's friend that he asked you to kill?
We beat their asses. I had Will at that time. Will has the push blast or whatever, so he just opened that fight by blast. It pushed him off the edge and then killed all of his little cronies. We sensed there was an ambush, and we just fucking murdered all of them.
I did something similar. It took me a couple of attempts, but basically, I just lightning bolted them a bunch. Lou is asking if I found the time limited quest in the Underdark. Are you talking about the guy trapped behind the wall? Okay, yes, I did. I did find that. I got the rune powder. I blew up the door. That was actually, I think so I long rested right before I went through that door, and it was fine. Which was interesting. Like he was still alive. Maybe that was a bug. But
oh, interesting. The guy, right? Yeah, we did that quest all at once. But I do know that if you long rest, you can fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense.
Another friend of mine, yeah,
he impinged in my head and was like, "I'm dying," and I was like, "I need to rest," because I just that was like, I kicked like when I was describing kicking everybody off the edge. I did that, and then I long rested, and then I went through that door. But I also I don't know, like that was, I think last week I spoke about this. Is like the thing that was like disappointing to me is like you get to that edge and you can see down into the temple. And I was like, "Oh, I will feather fall into the temple or fly into the temple,"
yeah,
and wouldn't let you. And I was like, "This is what I was talking about." Like, you can see the edges the more you play, because it's like, "Oh, I should be able to do this," and you can't because reasons, I guess, right? Like,
yep. We intended to do the exact same thing. Hey, what did you do about the rats in the temple?
I have talked to them, but I haven't attacked them yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we specifically did not attack them. We intimidated them, I think, and we were like, "Hey, knock it off." And they were like, "Okay," and they all left or whatever. But there's like stuff there. There's lore there that I think we missed because we banished the rats instead of actually like dealing with the rats. I'm pretty sure the rats you can like fight and do a whole thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I was like, I'm sure this will work and do something at some point. And then when I was fighting the guy with the golem, one of the rats just started attacking the golem. I'm like, okay, that works. The end.
Who's the guy with the golem?
In the temple, there is.
Oh, the flesh golem. The zombies.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yep. I'm on board. Yep.
Yeah.
We killed him too. He was pretty fun. We killed him at the very end of a long rest, and we were like, or the very end of a long thing, and we were like, okay, we're gonna leave. We're gonna go back to Last Light. We're gonna rest. And we were like, do you think we can kill this guy without resting? Like 0 spell slots. Everybody's at half HP. I was like, I'm pretty sure we can fuck him up. Yeah. So we killed Balthazar or whatever. Yeah, I know the story of the rats because somebody told me that the rats are a polymorphed. Basically, the story of the devil, Raphael's devil guy or whatever, is the we know they're a guy. I read a book. We read a book. I read a book. This one, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. They're a polymorphed follower of Shar, and they probably got polymorphed by Raphael, right, or something. Give me credit for reading every book in this whole game. Yes, you have credit, even though we totally fucked up the Shar puzzle to get the Night Song spear for the longest time. I am honestly a little mad about it because I think my answer should have worked, and I'm pissed.
Was your answer the Idol of Shar that you picked up like 3 hours ago? Yeah, yes! Right?
And I left it in Shadow Heart's inventory. I didn't sell that shit even 250 gold or something like that because for the RP, and I was like, oh, I'm so fucking smart. We're gonna put the Idol of Shar in. No, it's not that. I wanted to.
It's the book. Yeah, I was mad about that too because it's the book that tells you that it's like the book that gives you the answer isn't supposed to be the answer,
That's
right?
the dumbest thing. It
Yeah.
is so fucking stupid bad. Yeah, I'm so mad about it. Yeah. Yeah, because the story I'm pretty sure that's happening is the devil who you kill, who is Raphael's like friend or whatever, like was bound to a contract to kill all of the Shar followers in the temple or whatever, but the last follower of Shar got polymorphed into that swarm of rats. And so because he can't kill that swarm of rats or something, that's why he's still down there, and Raphael like makes you go after them. Honestly, to be fair, I never even got a follow-up with Raphael. Raphael was like, kill that guy for me, and I was like, you know what, okay, I thought it was going to be the same guy as Will's quest. Turned out
Yeah, I thought.
yeah, it turns out this is why I got Will. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go bring Will for this because it's gonna like matter. No, it fucking didn't, and it sucked, and it was really hard because Will does no fucking damage. And also we were pretty out of spell slots and everything at that point. Judicious use of the thunder push arrow was what got us there on that fight. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a good. I mean, we basically just spent an hour telling stories about the game, so it's obviously a pretty good game, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. I guess we haven't really talked a little bit about, how how things have played out.
Yeah. I like. It's a good game. It's got some flaws in it, right? Like, it feels like intimidation is mostly another form of persuasion, right? Like, and I get it, right? There are rough edges, and I get it, and there are bugs, and I get it. But like, still love it. Still top contender for like game of the year for me.
I guess it is. You know what? I'm being mean, but it probably is a top contender for game of the year. I remember thinking there was another game that I played this year that really head over heels for. I was like, it's probably this over that. The one thing I want to ask about is how you felt about multiplayer. Have you done any multiplayer stuff?
I have not. I have not had the opportunity. Just because like I haven't been particularly aggressive about pursuing that with other people. And I was like, oh, maybe at some point. And there's also like 17 other games, right? Like Josh got distracted by Armored Core 6. I got mildly distracted by Armored Core 6.
Yeah, I do want to play more in a group setting. I actually think the correct way to play the game is probably like I think Rachel and I do it because we obviously like live together and work together pretty well and everything like that. But I think the best way to play the game is actually probably to play through alone so that you kind of get the full sort of story and everything like that, and then playing through with a group of people who already sort of know stuff, right? I think that oh yeah, do we work pretty well together? No, we fucking don't. Okay, you need to set up more sneak attacks for me. Okay, I have a sneak attack quota. All right, and you never get in range to fucking threaten guys so that I can get sneak attacks off. Yeah, fuck you, Rachel. Okay, that's what I say about that. Okay, get fucked. It has made me want to play D&D so fucking bad though. I tell you what, playing Baldur's Gate has made me just like go so insane for wanting to play more D&D, which is not a feeling that I ever got with Kingmaker.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, it's because I think it's because Baldur's Gate 3 lets you do all the fun stuff, right? Like do all the weird stuff. Yeah.
I also just think that this is part of my. I think D&D is a D&D 5e is a good system, right? One of the things that makes Pathfinder unfun is the haste problem that I was sort of talking about before. Haste is so insanely powerful in that game that basically everything comes down to turn 1, cast haste on your whole party. Turn 2, everyone's dead.
Yeah,
right?
It is not as powerful in 2e, which is
yeah. Oh, in Pathfinder 2e, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's also not as powerful in 5e.
Yeah.
Which I think has made Baldur's Gate kind of more engaging on kind of like a system. There is actually kind of a lot of stuff that I miss about a little bit about some of the crunchier systems that Pathfinder has to has to offer. Like I don't know.
Oh, so
pretty powerful in 5e2. I'm afraid of how it must be in Pathfinder. In Pathfinder, it is the entire party gets extra.
Yeah. So it is adapted from. It was this powerful in 3.5.2, right? It's like everybody in the party gets an extra action or an extra attack on a full attack
Yeah, it is an extra attack
Extra,
and a full attack. Yeah.
a +1 to hit, extra movement speed, like 7 different things. It is so, and there's no concentration in that game at all. So like, it's not like you have to worry about it dropping off.
Yep.
Um,
And
yeah.
so in Kingmaker, haste is just like absolutely nutty, right?
So
There's been some stuff that we've had to do because of haste. I will end up drinking potions pretty liberally in combat. We did a whole thing in Act 3 that I won't get into much detail, but like there's a big requirement for action economy in there where you really have to be making sure that like you have free actions to do stuff. So it was pretty common for me to be chugging potions of speed in order to like get an extra, getting an extra action or whatever. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, and it's just like such a multiplicative effect too, right? It's like if Karlak has 2 attacks now, so if I cast haste on her or have her drink a speed of potion, she gets 4 attacks, right? Like
Yep.
4 attacks that are potentially at +10 with Great Weapon Master, right? Like it's fucking nutty. Yeah, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
good game.
Well, do you have anything else you want to?
About this game in particular? No, I think we're good to move on to our weeks, I guess.
Okay. Well, how was it? What did you do about it?
So things I have done this week. Going in reverse, I played some Starfield today because today was the day it came out on Game Pass.
Yeah. Okay. We were talking about this before the cast. Give me. How far did you get in Starfield? Did you just do the opening?
So I have done part of the opening. I have gotten off. I have like. Have you played it at all, or have you just like? Okay, I got to the collective or whatever the explorers, the constellation.
Constellation.
Yeah, and I have gone to Mars with the constellation lady, and that is where I stopped playing just because.
Okay, I completed that quest, and then I also have I've fucked around a little. I fucked around on the first planet. I fucked around in the solar system. Like I went to, was it Pluto? I maybe went to one of the moons, like Europa or something like that, just to like see what I could do or whatever. I'm kind of hazy on some of that stuff, and then I did. I enlisted with the UC.
Okay.
When you will go to that guy and you get the quest to go to Mars or whatever, you can enlist with the UC. I did that as well, which is, to be honest, not much. It's just kind of like you talk to a bunch of guys, you go into the bottom, you do a flight simulator essentially, and then you come out. I quite like the Starship stuff. I gotta be honest. The Starship stuff was really fun, at least so far.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have enjoyed it a little bit. I just did like kind of the tutorial, but basically what I'm trying to do is like in like Skyrim, right? Like is like the direct comparison point. You basically do a little stuff. Usually you end up walking to that first dragon temple, right? And then you walk to the first town, and then after that is when things like really kind of open up. And like I'm just like waiting to kind of get to that point. It's like I will do the tutorial stuff, and then I'll just go like do my Skyrim thing, where it's kind of like wander around and be like, "Oh, that looks interesting," and go do that instead.
Yeah, I guess I felt like I found that by going to Constellation and then the UC. The UC is also really nice, and I would recommend enlisting because it's like joining the Fighters Guild, right? It's just like one of the storylines you can pursue over the course of the game. But they have a really useful thing, which is backstory. One of the things you do when you enlisted the UC is you walk through this hall with murals and like little buttons, and you can press the buttons and it explains the lore of the game, which I have not looked into at all. I don't understand any of this, right? But I just sat and I listened to these buttons, and it maybe goes for 5 or 10 minutes, and it just explains, and it's like, oh yeah, well, the UC Earth died and the UC sprung up, and then there was a rebellion, and the rebellion created the Free Star Collective, and they're cowboys, and the UC are not cowboys, and there's a third group called House Varun, who I'm sure are bad guys that will show up later. I have not interacted with them, and there used to be mechs and xeno weapons, but they discontinued the mechs and the xeno weapons in the treaty because they were too powerful, bad, and fucked up. And it's just like all of that, getting that lore dump was actually great, and I loved it. Because I think part of my issue with Starfield a little bit is it has not gripped me with the world in the same way that Skyrim did effortlessly. In such a way that I think it is like one of the true gaming like great. Skyrim is a true great game and is for this immersive effect, right? It submerges you in the world of Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls and everything so cleanly and completely, just kind of from minute one. And I have just had a real tough time triggering that and making the world of Starfield not feel generic to my ears, essentially. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess I feel that. I don't know. I feel like it's definitely started to get its hooks into me. It got its hooks into me in the kind of like, oh, I'm going to be a guy in space exploring the unknown, right? Like, this is like a thing I kind of feel in my real life, which is like the meme. It's like born too late to explore the world, too early to explore the universe, just in time to browse dank memes, right? Like,
yes. No, we had a whole podcast about this, right? Why the fantasy of just a couple of bros on a starship, on a wind and a prayer is like such a great plot hook for these space games, right? That's Starfield, right?
No. Oh God. Honestly, this is probably why I enjoy Outlander. Cause it's like it's a lot of that, right? Like it's like just some dudes on the frontier, right? Like living with their wives, explicitly escaping. Like I finished season 5 of Outlander. That's another thing I did this week.
Great. Right? I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, like it's like explicitly people who were born too late to explore the world who get to go back in time and like experience that frontier kind of stuff, right? Like,
I'm in a weird place. Have you seen any of the like space westerns are so boring discourse on Twitter about Starfield?
Hold on, I gotta just salute. Young Ian you don't get to call him a cultural appropriate. So Young Ian is a character. So you know how I told you last time about how Roger gets like sold into slavery to the Mohawks?
Yes.
When they go and rescue him, Ian basically offers himself to take his place, which is how they end up like working it out, right? So Ian is basically like living among the Mohawk, right? And they make him one of them. So I don't think it's fair to call him a cultural appropriator because he has literally been like, forcibly turned into a Mohawk, right? Like,
an assimilationist, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then he comes back because I think someone broke his heart. It's like I haven't gotten the full details yet, but
yeah, there was this discourse on Twitter that was like, I beg of you, make anything but space westerns. We've done space westerns to death. Firefly was 20 years ago, like this kind of thing. And I felt this like sort of urge, this like, I don't know, like patriotic urge to sort of defend, like the Western archetype is a truly American archetype.
Yeah.
For sort of like culture that I think it is worth it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Give me more fucking space westerns, god damn it. Yeah, and frankly, I think we do need better space westerns because I kind of think Star Wars has sort of fallen off a cliff in a way.
Star Wars also isn't. It's not exactly a space western. Like I get like the point there, but like it's like that's Star Wars is space fantasy. Star Trek is like space utopianism, right? It's like what is it? Fully automated luxury space communism, right? Like that is what Star Trek is, right? Like
yeah, and there's also all this stuff about, and I don't know that I want to go on another history rant. I sort of want to go on another history. There's all this stuff about like the Confederacy, and I am a big hater of the Lost Cause. Do you know about like the Lost Cause like myth or whatever?
Buddy bravely comes out against the Confederacy on our podcast.
Yeah. No. This is the thing, and part of this is because this is just like World War II. I got real deep into Civil War history, and my big introduction was kind of Lost Cause stuff. But the deeper I got into it, the better I realized the history was, and the dumber I realized the Confederacy was. Like, there's a lot of sort of like myth making about like, oh, Robert E. Lee was such a brilliant general. He was so much smarter than Grant. Grant just had more. It's like, no, sorry, bud. And let me tell you about my boy William Tecumseh Sherman, baby. Like, and it's just like, anyway. So I have a lot of complicated feelings about like the Civil War, but I can put that shit aside when I am understanding this sort of like space western shit, and it drives me insane that people cannot get on board with this, right? Because a lot of these space westerns are built on the fantasy of dispossessed Confederate soldiers who moved west into kind of the Wild West period, which is a true art. That's a true thing that happened, right? There were a lot of soldiers who did that thing to kind of escape, what they foresaw at the time as sort of like Union tyranny or whatever. But we can decouple that archetype from kind of the political misgivings that we would all say is pretty bad underneath there, right? And say, yeah, a loner who just lost this great war or whatever and goes out to the frontier because he can't bear to live under the yoke of whatever. It's like, that's a good pitch, god damn it, that's cool or whatever. And I feel like I'm like reading these like super fucking stupid comments about this shit that makes me want to like pull my hair out, because I agree the Confederacy sucks and there's a lot of dumb shit about how we talk about like the Civil War and all this other sort of stuff, right? But like I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm getting on these stupid history rants lately. Maybe I'm just becoming middle-aged. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's
a middle-aged dad obsessing over Civil War history.
Yeah, well, it's become like people want to like have their hot takes on Twitter and like just like say things and like not have any sense of like actually anything, right? Like especially particularly politically aligned, maybe particularly partisan.
It is honestly, it is the thing that it breaks this always down for me is this chain reaction of one thing means another thing, right? If you like space westerns, it means you're pro slavery, right? It's just like, man, can we just like deal? No, I don't like. I don't want to.
It's like, I like pancakes. Oh, so you hate waffles? No,
yeah. But it's honestly even worse than that. It's like, I like pancakes. Oh, so that you think that
Aunt Jemima is
mechanized industrial slavery in the West Indies that introduced sugar plantations to European palates was a good thing. It's like, shut the fuck up, okay? Like, it's sort of what I want to say. Just shut your fucking mouth, okay? I don't want to hear this. my I don't know why I feel like I've done this a lot recently. Half of the podcast into like me bitching about like dumb political stuff that I think is super cringe.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what happens, right? This is the world we live in, right? Like,
this is the world we live in.
Your fave is problematic, right? Like, Henry Cavill is an incel or something. I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I started digging into this just because I'm a drama whore. And I really wanted to understand like what was going on. Everybody is so mad about the new season of The Witcher. There's like this whole backlash about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something different what I'm talking about, but like also like the Witcher thing, right? Like, and like Eric Kane posted a thing. It's like effectively Netflix threw. It's that Liam Hemsworth is the new Geralt, I think. Like threw him under the bus because like their advertising campaign for the third season was like, he's not gone yet or something like that, right? Like, or like it's just like even regardless of like the object level thing, you don't do that to like your new star, right? Like you're basically saying like, it's not worth watching after this season.
And you got to imagine Liam Hemsworth is like a guy, he's been in shows, you know what I mean? Like he draws a real paycheck, right? Yeah, exactly like that, right? Like, I don't know. That stuff doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I remember liking the first season of The Witcher, but I don't know. We never got around to seeing the second one.
Yeah.
All these Netflix shows, Netflix has really poisoned the well for me because I feel like every good Netflix show gets canceled. And so I just like, it's hard for me to get invested. Like I went really hard for Archive 81. Do you remember that? It was like that horror show I was talking about a couple of months ago or whatever. They left that in a great place for season 2. I was really hooked. I was really into it or whatever. Nope, canceled. Like,
yeah,
okay.
There was a thing here. It's like, after like 2 seasons is when like you could start demanding real money, and this is why like Netflix is like basically like, to tie it into kind of like the modern writer strike stuff is like Netflix doesn't actually care about like people watching their content because it's like not their model, right? Like they just care about people signing up. And because of that, like, it doesn't matter. Also, like apparently the stats are like the most watched thing on Netflix is Suits reruns, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
the most watched thing on Netflix is consistently like reruns of old favorites, right? Like not actual content. And so like I was listening to a podcast with like the guy, one of the writers from Cheers, who was
Mhm.
like, basically Netflix should have never gotten into the content game, right? Like, and if they had never gotten into the content game, then maybe like, and like, the content producers should have never gotten into the streaming game, right? Because like everything's balkanized again. Like, I'm sure piracy is on the rise again. I mean, let's talk about things I've seen in Twitter. It's like, I'm going to pirate it because I don't want to pay for 7 streaming services.
Yeah, I mean the stuff with Max, HBO Max is insane, right? David Zaslav. David Zaslav is, his claim to fame is reality television, and then he buys the most prestigious brand in TV, which is basically the last bastion for like good, thoughtful, artful, like whatever, right? The most watched shows on HBO Max are these HBO shows, right? So it's like, it's not even like Netflix where it's like, oh well, the only thing that actually people watch is like fucking Office reruns or something like that. It's like, well, no, actually the things that people are watching are, like these high budget, really well made shows like Succession or whatever like that. And David Zaslav got so mad at this that he has fucked his own algorithm to forcibly show people garbage reality show content in the same thing as HBO, and then removed the HBO name from
Max.
it's not called the HBO Max anymore, it's just called Max or whatever. Just because he's essentially like butthurt about like the prestige brand outdoing his dog shit brand.
Yeah. Oh fuck. I discovered partially through Dropout that like there are people who like care about reality television shows. I don't get it. I don't get it, man.
The only reason I get it is because of Kroll Show. That's the genesis of my understanding of reality, because the genesis for Kroll Show was a writer named John Levenstein, who he was, like his famous thing was Arrested Development, but he came on to be essentially the showrunner for Kroll Show. And the thing was, when he wasn't working between seasons, he got really 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 addicted to these trashy reality TV shows, and he ended up pitching with Nick Kroll, right? What if we did a skit show, but all of the skits are different like garbage reality TV shows essentially. And so that's my understanding of contribution to reality TV stuff. I don't know. I feel like it's like how some of the most watched shows are like these cop procedurals or whatever, like Law and Order and shit like that. And it's just like, does that just happen over time? Does your brain just sort of like rot? And like all you can do is like watch Law and Order reruns.
Well, like Law and Order, at least Law and Order makes sense to me because it's like very simple plots, but like they're plots, right? Like it's like criminal does a thing, detectives solve the crime, right? Like maybe there's a courtroom scene too, right? Like, and like that's at least like a
Oh no, I'm sorry. Listen, you're talking to the guy who will watch 800 hours of YouTube content about the Titanic sinking.
Oh
Okay?
yeah,
Listen, like
yeah. I would say like I've got my own personal like like I watch too much YouTube, way too much YouTube, right? Like I've been rewatching like Mandalore reviews and like best of the worst episodes from Red Letter Media, right? Like that is what some of my nights look like. So I'm not gonna. I watched Law and Order 3 hours a day every day in college. Yeah, no, I used to do some of that too, just because like it was like the thing that was on in like the common room, right? Like, I don't like. There's something comforting about it, right? Like this is also like maybe to go back to the Outlander thing, right? Like I enjoy sitting on the couch and calling out things that will happen in Outlander, and then they happen. Um, oh, I should tell you about this. You will find this incredible.
I just have to say, banger joke in the chat. Okay, from Rachel. Yeah, I mean, I just watch really dog shit podcasts about caves on Twitch. Yeah, it's pretty good. You know what? You got me. Okay.
7 years and like 2 loyal fans, 3 maybe. But yeah. So in Lou will know about this in Outlander season 5. There is a moment where basically the show has a lot of like sexiness for it's aimed at women, whatever. And so um the couple had like the main character is like the first woman doctor to graduate from Harvard, right? And this is even more true because she has because she's back in time, so she's like the only woman that's like capable of doing any of this medicine stuff, right? Like, power fantasy, whatever. But her and her husband have sex, right? And then the next morning she's looking through a microscope, and I turn to my girlfriend and I say, Jamie, these are your sperms. And I was right. She was like literally looking, and she like scraped it out of herself, and she like says to Jamie that that's how she got it. This is like the moment that this reminds me of like fucking what's his name eating the peach in Call Me by Your Name, right? It's like
Oh my god.
You should watch this show, buddy.
I kind of feel like I should. Holy shit. That is buck wild. That's buck wild.
Yeah, like this. So the like I said it as a joke, and she looks, and she has a look, and it shows the picture. I'm like, no, and she's like, it's semen filled with sperm, and then Jamie goes, you mean seed, right? Like just because, like, it's like...
You know what though? I actually really get it. I actually the worst part of this manga is that I totally understand why for a lot of women that moment works really well. I bet they love that shit, to be honest with you. I should watch this fucking show, huh? I really need to watch this show.
So Lou says the first part being when Claire fucks Jamie alive again. If it's the scene I'm thinking of, I looked at my girlfriend and was like, was she like jerking him off while that was happening? And like it's very ambiguous.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a fucking show.
That's a mess. Listen, this is why we gotta watch Chernobyl, okay? About those two guys who saw the nuclear reactor and it just killed them. Just seeing it killed them. Okay, Rachel in the chat. I'm obsessed with those two guys. I think I'll be obsessed with those two guys for the rest of my fucking life. It's funny because I'm watching The Sopranos again, which is maybe part. I felt like my New Jersey accent has been coming back really hard recently. Rachel made a joke about it, and all of my friends at work agreed, and I felt insanely attacked. They were like, "Does anybody feel like Buddy's New Jersey accent is getting worse?" I think it's because I keep calling things dog shit. And it's really easy to go dog shit, right?
No, I know what you mean. Man.
But yeah, I've been watching The Sopranos again. And the crazy thing about watching The Sopranos in 2023, honestly, that is fucking me up more than anything else is like cell phones. They don't have fucking cell phones. Because this is like set in like 2002 or something like that.
Right.
It's so weird. It is so weird.
Yeah. I think I'm going to start watching The Sopranos soon. It is, with the finishing of Outlander, it is my turn to pick a season of a series to watch, and Sopranos seems like it fits.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
So Arahe says in the chat, everyone knows the answer to poison is suck it out, eyebrow waggle. This happens. Roger sucks the poison out of Jamie's like in the middle of the forest.
Can I just say for the ring? I don't know why I know that. I actually do know why. I know this. That's not real. That's not real advice. Okay, listen, if somebody gets a fucking snake bite, do not, quote unquote, suck the poison out. That's not how poison works. Yep. One of my other favorite things, which I've talked about a little bit on the podcast, is my deep love of expert reacts to film and television about field of study, right? And in one of those, there was like a survival expert who talks about like, yep, sucking the poison out doesn't do anything. All it does is put blood in your mouth, it's worthless. It doesn't make any difference at all. Like, don't care about it. I also love those videos. I have gone so deep for those videos. Part of my thing in our Warcraft D&D game that I'm really into was because I watched a couple of tank commanders react to tank movies, World War II tank movies.
Or like Fury.
And they were talking about different, Fury, famously a tank movie I deeply love and that I am constantly referencing in this game, right? Because that movie is also very accurate in terms of the tank crews and kind of how like the tanks themselves sort of like functioned and did shit or whatever. But I could do a million of those. Yeah, CIA agent talks about movie disguises, deep cover identities. I love that. There's the bank robbers, right? Like talk about like how real bank robberies go, like go down or went down or whatever. Just like I can watch that stuff like all the time.
So I actually get some of that because my girlfriend has a master's in like early American history. And so like as we are watching
Outlander.
Well, as we were watching Outlander, the seasons that take place in like Revolutionary, she's like, that's not an accurate marriage scene, right? Like that's like this is not how any of this would look, right? And I'm sitting there being like, well, you could just like write it, like you could put a line in and be like, this is some strange new custom, must be from Boston, where they say they are from, which is true, but like in the wrong year, right? Like you just like hand wave it, but I guess they don't bother. I don't know.
Yeah, the early American history is actually really. I mean, I had that whole pitch for Seventh Expedition, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like the fantasy Lewis and Clark sort of thing. That has always been a deep fascination, just because like I think the thing
too late to explore the world, buddy. Too early to explore the stars.
Well, because it's also something about like the danger of it. Like I don't even remember what I was like watching or reading. Maybe I was reading this somewhere about just like how insanely dangerous it was to be like in the colonies in the 16 and 1700s, right? Just because North America was a truly. Bang, I just fell out of my chair.
Sorry, Lou.
Yeah, it's just like North America was like a truly like wild and untamed place, and like you could get fucking eaten by a mountain lion, right? Or like lose your way. That was the craziest thing actually was somebody was talking about how just getting lost in revolutionary times was a huge thing, and it happened all the time because there weren't a lot of roads, right? Like roads are a piece of infrastructure, and sure, in somewhere like Boston, right? You might have roads or whatever. But even if you were to go like west into Pennsylvania, right? At places that I would think of as being like highly urbanized at this point, like Pittsburgh or whatever, right? That was like the frontier, right? And there are roads to things like Pitt, which were just like, those roads degraded over time, and people thought they were following roads, and then the road would just end, and they would have to walk through forest essentially and just hope to pick up the trail on the other side, right? I was just like, oh my fucking god, this is like insane. But
no, I mean, obviously a much less pressing version of this is like there are trails that aren't well maintained by me. Sometimes I will be like, oh, I guess I gotta like find it, right? Obviously, I'm not no danger of dying or anything, but it's like you walk for a little while, hope you find it, and if you like, for me, it's like if I don't, I turn around and go back to the trail, and I like try and find a different way on the trail, right? Like, it's like really easy to like, to just like not know where you are, even with like technology, right? Like, there is a trail by me in particular that has like a big sign that's like, you will lose cell phone reception if you don't know how to read a map. Do not take this trail.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And it's like, it's like in a state park, but it's like, no more than like, I think like 10 miles across at its first part, which is, substantial, but like, like people get lost in there enough that they have to like put up warnings about this kind of thing, right? Like,
listen, too late to explore the world. Okay, man, go.
So this is the thing that like I didn't really appreciate until I moved up here, which is like once you get out of kind of like the major corridors, even like the road infrastructure, right? Like I have driven from where I am in New Hampshire to Canada, and like the amount of that is on like county kind of style roads that are like one lane in each direction that just like go on for miles and miles. It's like I didn't really appreciate that until I like, because you and I both grew up on the East Coast where like, what is it, like 90, 95, like,
Yeah.
it's just like kind of like corridor. West Coast is even more, like it's like that, but wider, right? They're like 4 lanes in each direction.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the East Coast is all of the towns are 10 minutes apart, or well, they're all 10 miles apart, right? Because that was the expected, right? You could walk 10 miles in a day. If you
Sure,
want to
yeah.
try to go from town 1 to town 2, you could 10 miles was about that distance, which is why towns on the East Coast are about 10 miles apart. But towns on the West Coast are, completely different because they came up in, the time of rail and cars or whatever. I will absolutely get that feeling though, driving through like the California desert, right? Like there are just some times when you're just like driving through the fucking desert and I'm just like, holy fuck, this is like no man's land.
Yeah. Yeah. But do you have anything else you want to talk about this week?
I guess there's a bunch of stuff, but who cares, right? We can talk about it later. It's like Hearthstone.
Yeah.
I played Hearthstone, Mango. There you go. That's an
update. You know what I played? I played Microsoft Jewels, which is a Bejeweled ripoff that they load into the Xbox app because I was bored. Oh my god.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm gonna say with that, if you'd like to email us about any of the things we talked about on this podcast, you can reach us at somederpsplaygames@gmail.com or podcast@derpsplaygames.com. You can follow us at twitch.tv/somederpsplaygames or youtube.com/@somederpsplaygames. Rate reviews wherever you find podcasts. Links are all down in the description. Buddy apparently has to go to D&D in 5 minutes. Other than that, Buddy, you have anything else you're looking to promote? I think a certain game got a release date, right?
Yeah, so Estrella, which we talked about last week on the podcast, I said there's a big announcement. That announcement on the podcast is that Estrella has a release date. That release date is September 21st. I would recommend every one of you go watch the Estrella announcement. It starts with a custom animation that I had one of our artists at the company do. His name is Drew. He's an incredibly talented guy, and I worked really hard on this stuff. I am so hyped for Astray. I'm going to be streaming Astray on Friday. Actually, we're doing Chat Picks the Dice. So if you wanna come and ruin my runs, please please feel free. So yeah, September 21st. That's when Estrella is out. Finally, we've been talking about this one on the podcast for a long time.
I'm so excited and I am so sad for you because it is an incredible game and it is coming out among a sea of other incredible games.
The funny thing is, I actually kind of feel like I'm pretty happy with September 20th as launch day. I feel like we'll be kind of out of Baldur's Gate. There's still obviously like Starfield and stuff like that, but yeah, it has been a truly brutal the last 2 months. The original release date for Australia, you want to know what it was? August 24th. I think we would have gotten slaughtered if we had done August 24th, but then we decided to push it back.
Yeah, so 5 days before Phantom Liberty. Which is like the
from Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah,
it's also the same day as Mortal Kombat 1, though part of this is counter programming. We talked a lot about I was like, are there a lot of Mortal Kombat 1 gamers who are going to be doing deck builders? I don't think so, right?
Yeah, no, there's a thing to talk about here too, because I play a lot of fighting games and I'm not interested in Mortal Kombat, and Mortal Kombat is kind of viewed as like I want to call it, I don't want it to be like a it is a less technical game, maybe is the way to put it, but like it constantly puts up much better numbers than Street Fighter, even though Street Fighter is more of the purists game, because it got blood and gore, and Americans like get over here and whatever. So it's interesting, but you got to go play D&D, and I should probably do some other stuff. So I'm going to say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.